Suppose you are doing a taste test comparing Murray's Vanillawafers with Nabisco. You want to prove that less than 50% of people prefer Murray's. Suppose that alpha is 0.05 and 42 of the 250 people choose Murray's. Perform a hypothesis test. Now let's notice that percentage again that tells us this is a proportion. So this is a hypothesis test for proportions. Let's start with our alternate hypothesis. And since we want to prove that less than 50% prefer, we want for P to be less than 50%, or 0.5. And then our null is going to be that same thing, but with an equal sign. So P equals 0.5. All right, now let's do our test statistic, but before we can, we need P hat. So P hat is 42 out of 250 people. So that's going to give us 42 out of 250 will be 0.168. All right, now let's plug this into our test statistic. Recall our test statistic for proportion is P hat minus P on top. So 0.168 minus P, which is 0.5. And this goes over the square root of P times 1 minus P over N. So our P is 0.5, 1 minus 0.5, and then the N is 250. All right, so let's work this out. On top, 0.168 minus 0.5 is negative 0.332. On the bottom, I'm going to work this out a little more before putting it in the calculator. I'll have 0.5, and the 1 minus 0.5 is 0.5 over 250. And now I'll put all of the bottom in the calculator. And I get 0.031622777, and I'll do that last division, and I'll go ahead and round to the tenths place, and I get negative 10.5. Now if I look that up on the chart, and let's notice this is a less than, so what I look up on the chart is my p-value. So I'm going to go ahead and write down p-value here. But we're going to look up negative 10.5. And like our first example, notice that negative 10.5 is way off the chart, which means our probability, or our p-value, is less than 0.0001. It's a very tiny p-value, so it's less than 0.0001. All right, so our p-value is very small, and that is smaller than 0.05, which means we reject our null hypothesis. Okay, so if we reject the null hypothesis, that means that this is our true hypothesis, that people don't prefer Murray's as much as they do Vanillawafers. So they prefer, there are less people that like Murray's. All right, so there is significant evidence. And we will say the p-value is less than 0.001 to reject the null hypothesis. It appears that less than 50% of people prefer Murray's.